प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. So we are reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 2, the contents of Gita summarized. The chapter is also known as Sankhya Yoga. Text number 42 and 43. Text number 42, 43 and 44 are connected. Maybe we'll read those three texts. Let's see how it goes. Yamimam pushpitam vacham प्रवदन्ति अविपश्चितः वेदवादरताः पार्थ नान्यदस्तीतिवादिनः कामात्मानः स्वर्गपरा जन्म कर्म फलप्रदाम् कामात्मनः क्रिया विशेष बहुलाम् भोगैश्वर्य गतिं प्रति. Let me read text number 44 and we'll read the translations together. भोगैश्वर्य प्रसक्तानां तयापहृत चेतसां व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धिः समाधौ न विधीयते. Translation to text number 42, 43 and 44. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. Text number 44, translation. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So we'll read purport to text 42 and 43 and later we'll see. In between our discussion, we'll read purport to text number 44. People in general are not very intelligent, and due to their ignorance, they are most attached to the fruitive activities recommended in the Karma Kand portion of the Vedas. They do not want anything more than sense gratificatory proposals for enjoying life in heaven, where wine and women are available and material opulence is very common. In the Vedas, many sacrifices are recommended for elevation to the heavenly planets, especially Jyotishtoma sacrifices. In fact, it is stated that anyone desiring elevation to heavenly planets must perform these sacrifices, and men with a poor fund of knowledge think that this is the whole purpose of Vedic wisdom. It is very difficult for such inexperienced persons to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness. As fools are attached to the flowers of poisonous trees without knowing the results of such attractions, enlightened men are similarly attracted by such heavenly opulence and the sense enjoyment thereof. In the Karma Kanda section of Vedas, it is said, Apama somam amrita abhuma and akshayam ha vai chaturmasya yajinaha sukritam bhavati. In other words, those who perform the 4-month penances become eligible to drink the somaras beverages, to become immortal and happy forever. Even on this earth, some are very eager to have somaras to become strong and fit to enjoy sense gratifications. Such persons have no faith in the liberation from material bondage, and they are very much attached to the pompous ceremonies of Vedic sacrifices. They are generally sensual, and they do not want anything other than heavenly pleasures of life. It is understood that there are gardens called Nandan Kanan, in which there is a good opportunity for association with angelic, beautiful women, and having a profuse supply of somaras wine. Such bodily happiness is certainly sensual. Therefore, there are those who are purely attached to such material temporary happiness as lords of the material world. Let's read text number 44. It's just a few lines and it's beautiful, connected to these verses. I'll read the translation again. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Purport. Samadhi means fixed mind. The Vedic dictionary, the Nirukti, says, Samyak adhiyatesmin atma tattva yathatmyam. When the mind is fixed for understanding the self, it is said to be in Samadhi. Samadhi is never possible for persons interested in material sense enjoyment and bewildered by such temporary things. They are more or less condemned by the process of material energy. Hare Krishna. So, the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita has been entitled by Srila Prabhupada as content of Gita summarized, because chapter 2 deals with the whole of Bhagavad Gita per se, and whatever you read in chapter 2 is elaborated in chapter 3, 4, 5 onwards. As in the introduction to many of his books, Srila Prabhupada has repeatedly emphasized that the whole purpose of all this, the whole purpose of knowing our own selves and elevating ourselves, purifying ourselves, is finally to connect with the original truth, or to connect ourselves to something which is more meaningful and wonderful, and it is full of attributes, what is called as Bhagavan. If that doesn't take place, then the whole meaning to getting purified, all the tapasyas, all the yoga, asanas, pranayams, puja, archana, all those things what we do, yagyas, will not have any meaning. So, I'm trying to emphasize this particular fact. These verses are trying to describe that how the Vedic literatures do describe many activities which are facilitating gratification, and it is a tendency of a person, once he gets attached to these flowery words, or those passages in the Vedic literatures which are very attractive to the mind and the senses, one could have the tendency to get deluded further and further ahead. The bigger question would come here is, why would Vedic literatures, which are designed to offer a solution to mankind, have something in them written in a manner where an individual will get more distracted, more confused probably, or more indulge in gratification? So here we need to understand the context in which Krishna is speaking these verses to Arjun. This knowledge is being imparted to Arjun, and the reason why these verses or these things are mentioned in the Vedas. I think yesterday only we were discussing this aspect, that Rigved has many sacrifices. Here we see that Jyotishtoma sacrifice is mentioned. This sacrifice is done by many people, especially by every Grihastha. And so many such sacrifices are there. So you keep reading one after other. It begins from Puja to Agni and then Indra. These are the main gods. And there is a definition of the supreme truth, but not in a completely clear way. So when you read this, because we already have heard Srimad Bhagavatam and we have been repeatedly hearing this aspect of loving service and connecting to God, we have been blessed to get a comprehensive picture of this whole thing. So it makes us, it makes things easier for us to understand why things are written in a certain way. But for example, if you do not have this clarity of the philosophy of Srimad Bhagavatam or the aspect of loving God, what could happen? What would happen? Living entity by nature, the Atma is made of the quality that it is going to perpetually want to be seeking pleasure. Now, when we say seeking pleasure, that means there is an utkantata or an incessant eagerness to be driven towards anything that gives pleasure. That simply means, let's talk from the point of view of a sadhak or somebody who is beginning to do some kind of sadhana. He will continue to do sadhana only if he is relishing the sadhana. If he does not derive some pleasure in any aspect of sadhana also, immediately after that he will want to do something which gives him pleasure. That is what is called that the Atma is always seeking pleasure. Ananda Mayobhyasat. Always wanting to be situated in the aspect of Ananda. Just take this very simple aspect that even when you are sitting in your place, or when you sit on a sofa, you try to sit in a way which is going to be most comfortable, and after 5-10 minutes, if that is giving slight discomfort, immediately you'll adjust. Means you do not have to think that, oh, I'm getting discomfort, so what should I do? So I should move my position. Okay, which position will give me comfort? All those things you don't do. Those things just happen instinctively. It happens instinctively. And this you can see also in small infants or children. Instinctively, an Atma aligns itself to Ananda, wherever it can get pleasure. So if the Atma does not get pleasure in spiritual matters, it is bound to seek pleasure in material things, and it will do it incessantly. And therefore, let's say that when the creation was done and when the Vedic literatures were first spoken, now here there are living entities who have no clue of what this world is, how to deal with it, and so many other things. So, and the living entities Anandmay means a person who is attached to gratification, or he is made that way, so he's naturally going to be doing that. How would you actually teach such a person the concept of Paramananda or the concept of transcendence? It's very difficult. So you need a channel in a way that you feed that person's senses in a certain way that it also attracts him to slowly to the aspect of transcendence. So therefore, when you read the Vedic literatures, it begins with now the fire element, which is going to nourish your life in the form of sun, fire in the form of, when you have fire, you have heat, you can cook food, and so many other things. Fire is a very fundamental, it's a basic element which drives the whole creation. If there is no fire, things all shut down. So it begins with glorifying Agni Dev and then the details. Now, when with every single yajna, which is designed to facilitate your house, your family, your health, your progeny, and so on, a materialistic person will be more encouraged, more and more. He'll see, oh, here is a manual which is helping me to make a good family. Here is a manual which is helping my offsprings. Here is a manual which is helping my health. And getting into it, you do not get those. You do not just do yajna for the sake of it. In every yajna, there is an aspect of offering this to that supreme truth, to that supreme truth. So you also get the pleasure of the senses, and at the same time you get hints. Okay, for that person, and when you are doing that, let's say for a typical yajna, Indra is the presiding deity. So you get attracted to Indra also, knowing that Indra is helping me in this, Indra is helping me in this, Agni is helping me in this, Vayu is helping me in this. You get attracted to those deities, and getting attracted to those deities or the devatas, it also makes us get attracted to something which is beyond our senses, beyond our sense perception. Like all the devatas, or as Srila Prabhupada says, demigods, these are beyond our sense perception. We do not interact with them on a daily basis. So I am getting something which is facilitating my desires. At the same time, I am also knowing that these desires are facilitated by someone whom I am unable to see. And that's the first stage of beginning. And that is why the Vedic literatures have all these things, have all these elements in place. This is not exactly, these the things are, things in the Vedic literature are not designed to confuse a living entity, but to attract that particular person. And as a person keeps doing, slowly, slowly, gradually, after getting, let's say I got a home, let's say I got a spouse, let's say I got kids, let's say I got a reasonable amount of things and so many other things, I got all those things, and then later I automatically a person will feel that how are these devatas functioning, how do they facilitate, then I'll be wanting to know more about the devatas. Once I get involved in trying to know more about the devatas, I'll want to know how the devatas get this power, how they get empowered, how they facilitate, what is their service in this creation, what is their role. And that opens a chapter to go further to that truth, whom we very clearly understand is called as Bhagavan, Vishnu, Narayan, all the avatars which whom we hear. So one thing we understand that Vedic literatures, they facilitate the entire spectrum from a person who is very conditioned to a person who is transcendental. That entire spectrum of devotees, entire spectrum of living entities are dealt with and they are facilitated, knowing that that's a progressive aspect. So here when Krishna is saying these verses, we should understand there are verses in the Bhagavad Gita where it also says Kamaisthaise Rita Jnana Prapadyante Anya Devata, those whose minds are filled with kama, with desires, they approach various devatas. Sometimes people start offending devatas for that thing, for when they hear such verses. Gita or Vedic literatures do not offend the devatas, they do not offend the demigods, they do not offend such personalities at all. When it is told Bhogaishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Aparita Chetasam, text number 44, or Yamimam Pushpitam Vacha Pravadyanti Avipashita, Yamimam Pushpitam Vacha, that those whose minds are attracted to flowery Vedas, those whose Kamastesarita Jnana, those whose intelligence is stolen by material desires, Bhogaishwarya Prasaktanam, those who are attached to Bhoga and Aishwarya. So here there is no reference given to the devatas or demigods as being the problem. They are not the problem child here. I am the problem child. My mind is attached to the flowery words. My mind is filled with desires. My intelligence is stolen with incessant kama, desires. It's my mind, it's my intelligence which is a problem. And because I have this problem, naturally, if I have a particular disease, let's say I have a disease of a certain manner, I'm going to go to a doctor or a person where I'm going to be treated in a certain way. And that's what the devatas, the role of the devatas is. So having read these verses, having understood this, it is not that someone who worships the devatas automatically is a fallen person just because he approaches a devata. That's not the mood of Bhagavad Gita here at all. The principle here spoken is that every devata has a particular role, like all of us in this life, in this world, we have a role to perform. Let's put things in a proper perspective, in the best perspective, in a comprehensive perspective, in an integral perspective. When I say integral means we include all the components of personalities which are who have nourished our life and who are essential elements for our growth. Let's say, let me begin from myself. Who are the people? It's my mother, it's my father, there are my teachers, then there are my gurus, there's my guru, then there are param gurus, the acharyas, there are many other devotees, friends, and so on. So many people have done. Not only these people, there are politicians who have facilitated the nice roads and water and electrical systems and so many other things, because of which I'm also speaking the Gita right now. The person who has designed the laptops and so many people who have done all this facility. and are facilitating me right now and yesterday and also for tomorrow. All those people are, I'm duty bound to them in a certain proportion. And then as I take it further, the five elements, the gods who are managing those five elements, sun, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and so on. And then beyond that, the one who controls the five elements, then we come to the point of Vishnu. So this whole integration of this science is supposed to be understood. Otherwise, what happens that a person, when he reads such kind of things, he'll say, okay, because Vishnu is greatest, that means everybody else is totally nonsense. It's pure nonsense. We need to trash them. That is not the approach here at all. Absolutely not. So when Krishna says here, Yamimam Pushpitam Vacha, because the Devatas have a very, very specific role, that they award certain things. So who is going to go to them? Nowhere in the Vedic literatures it is spoken that a Devata is going to offer some kind of liberation or mukti or something. So why will a person go to a Devata? Naturally he'll go because he has something to do. For example, if I go to a particular shop, let's say I want to buy t-shirts and jeans and shoes, I'm not going to go to a CVS pharmacy because I clearly. So when you see a person going to a particular store, you understand that this person has these things in his mind. So this is what is being told, that people approach devtas because they are filled with many things of their own material lives which need to be in order. There could be another question here, that if Krishna is the source of everything, if Narayan is the source of everything, why does he appoint devtas to do this? He could do that by himself. Yes, he could do that by himself, but he specifically appoints some of his own trusted people to take care of that service. That's a thankless seva. He does that. You cannot become a devta without having no devotion or alignment to the Lord. It's not possible. There is some. They are better than many of the conditioned souls, and that's why they are there. I mean, many of the devtas are pure devotees. Many of them are also Bhagwan Shaktavesh avatar also. So Baldev Vidya Bhushan in the Vedanta Sutra gives a pretty much good clarity in this aspect. That remains the only commentary in the Bhakti domain, but his commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So anyways, so these things have to be understood with a proper perspective, that it is my problem because of which I am going to places which offer me a a quicker opportunity in that way. However, when we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, how does this thing resolve for a devotee? Let's say I'm a sadhak. Now, I am not such a pure sadhak at this stage that I have absolutely no material desires to be satisfied. No, I'm not like that. I also have many desires. I want a better place to stay. I want better food to eat. I want better people around me. I need so many things. I'm not talking about needs. Needs are basic things, but beyond the needs, I need certain comforts. I need certain luxuries, or I have certain ambitions and those things running in my mind. So, but at the same time, I understand the purpose of life. I have been blessed to understand the aspect of bhakti, love, and devotion, and so many other things. Now, having heard all of these things, I'm not fully comfortable to do prayers and yagyas and so many other things for material things. But at the same time, my mind cannot fully focus on the lotus feet of Krishna just for the sake of bhakti and nothing but bhakti. When I say prayer, when I say focus is not what you speak through the words. When the aspect of smaran which is spoken in the Bhagavad Gita, smaran is not just speaking in the mind or speaking aloud. My dear Krishna, give me bhakti. My dear Krishna, give me bhakti. Give me pure devotion. It's not like that. Deep within your heart, your mind, and your soul is infatuated with many things. You may not even speak it, but that is the loud sound which Krishna can hear. So although I speak some things which are very perfect, those things which are bothering my consciousness, my chitta, my chetana, that is what is going to be the point of building my growth or building my bhakti. So what should be done for a devotee, or how our acharyas explain karma mishra bhakta, where I have many desires to be fulfilled. At the same time, I am very clear that not at the cost of spirituality, but with spirituality, I want these things. Please, Krishna, this I need, whatever, that way. So for such people, the Bhagavatam explains where in the first canto itself, akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaridhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusha param. That if someone has akama, means he is purely purely relieved of all material desires. That is what akama. Akama, sarva kama. Sarva kama means filled with material desires. Have so many material desires. I'm not talking of material desires which are very whimsical, but something within the acceptable domain. You have lots of material desires. Sarva kama. Let's say not even here the sarva kama doesn't technically mean of the demoniac pure being like a rakshas kind of a person, but maybe a devata and even more. Akama sarva kamova moksha kama. Or you simply love that aspect of Brahman and you want just moksha. You want to relish that aspect, what it means to be mukta jiva. Na shochati, na kangshati, having absolutely no desire and no lamentation. Believe me, it's a very impressive achievement if someone can go to no hankering and no lamentation. The amount of peace and joy it brings, the stability it brings, is mind-boggling. We heard this yesterday in the discussion to text 9.2. Prabhupada clearly mentions in the purport that factually bhakti begins at the Brahma Bhuta stage. It begins, the true performance of bhakti begins when we are at Brahma Bhuta state. Brahma Bhuta state means it is a state of moksha. Na shochati, na kangshati. So till that stage, whatever bhakti we do is an attempt. It's a prayer that, my dear Lord, in all my condition, I am still striving to practice this. Please be merciful to me. It's a form of a prayer. Our sadhana, our services and our sadhana in the conditioned stage, it's what we call as bhakti yoga. It's a form of a prayer in itself. It's not Ananya Bhakti or what 9.2 Prabhupada mentioned in the purport. If you don't remember, you can please read that part. So, for devotees who have this mixed, who are still in the mixed stage of journey of life, for them, akama sarva kamova, moksha kama udaradhi, whatever is your desire, tivrena bhakti yogena, by intensity, just with a devotional spirit, yajeta purusham, just worship the Supreme Lord, just worship Purusha Param, the complete whole personality of Godhead. Obviously, there are not going to be people who want to approach that way. So it's better that instead, if he cannot directly focus on the Lord and the aspects of bhakti, at least he should be confined within the Vedic tree, or else he'll become a materialistic person who tries to achieve all his material desires in a whimsical way, in an artificial way. So why not approach the Vedic method of sense gratification? That is much more better than a demonic way of sense gratification. This is the whole purpose why Vedic literatures have these things. Now, the condition with Arjun is already with the Purna Purushottam Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord himself, and Krishna is speaking to him the inner core message. Arjun has requested Krishna to impart the knowledge in that which can satisfy the heart, that which can satisfy the mind in the most distressed condition. Arjun wants an integrated form of science, and that's why Krishna is giving this summary in this particular manner. That if you are really convinced that you are done with all these things, then know these things. And that's why he's saying that, okay, Yamimam Pushpitam Vacha Bhogaishwarya Prasaktanam Kameste Sarita Kya. This is the problem. The problem, Arjun, is our own tendencies. It is our own tendencies. Because I am greedy, therefore there is a problem with Devatas. That's not the problem. It is I am who are greedy. If because the civilization has become very lusty and greedy, and therefore there is an economic chain which is happening. It is not that the economic chain first came and therefore the civilization became greedy. It's not like that. No capitalist, no businessman will start a business when he knows that there is no market for it. They already know that people are greedy, people want to drink, people want to enjoy uh, illicit pleasures, and therefore there is an industry running around it. And of course, we can say that those are demoniac and this and that. But the problem is I am contributing to that system. In a similar way, when the Vedic literatures facilitate this thing, if you think from an administrator's point of view, you will understand. If you were ever the chief minister or a senator, what you call here, or the prime minister or the president of a country, you would know that you cannot simply just stop overnight meat eating. You cannot simply stop all the prostitute places. When we read Ramayana and Mahabharata, we hear that there were prostitutes in Dwarka, there were prostitutes in Ayodhya also. All those things were there. So when you see from a civilization and administration point of view, there are going to be all different classes of people, and you cannot just keep killing and eliminating or isolating them that way. So you'll have some sections which you keep a little bit far away from the city, and so many other things. You may have a social stigma attached to it or conditions and so on. But the matter of fact remains, this entire spectrum of people are going to be there. And therefore, they need to be catered to or facilitated in a way that there is a progressive journey. It cannot be that anybody who does not come to this topmost class, everybody else is so fallen, derogatory, and anybody facilitating anybody of any of these chains are the biggest demons in this creation. It doesn't really work that way. So when Krishna is speaking this to Arjun, Arjun has already Arjun is determined. He's already gone through that condition, and he wants clarity without juggling of words. And that's why this is what makes Bhagavad Gita, classifies Bhagavad Gita as an Upanishad. Although it is part of Itihasa Shastra, it is considered an Upanishad because of the pure crystal clear clarity. Upanishads are the only book in the whole Vedas, as we were discussing yesterday. There are many kinds of prayers, mantras and yajnas and so on, but whenever the discussion comes to the section of Upanishad always discusses about the supreme truth. Of course, not in a clear sense, but it clearly defines that all these pujas, yajnas, you want a nice home, you want a nice family, all these things all this facility is supposed to lead you to the truth. However, there are chances that someone due to his own karma may not get all these facilities. So what? Then the Upanishads say, still without that you can achieve the truth. That's the whole role of Upanishads. Then Upanishads go to the next level of discussion that you actually don't need any of these things to reach the truth. But that's a stage of psychological development. That's the stage of building one's faith, building one's consciousness, or as we call as kosha. The 5 koshas you often may hear: Pancha Kosha, Annamay, Pranmay, Manomay, Vijnanmay, and Anandmay. So as the kosh develops, so much amount of sadhana or right things you are able to do without the need to pleasure your senses. The urge to pleasure one's senses is a natural instinct, but there are transcendental ways to do that. So that is the only science which here Krishna is trying to tell to Arjuna. Do not give up, cast away, cast aside this selfish mind which is filled with too many desires. Try to work on it as you read these verses further and further. See, this is the summary of the whole Gita. It's chapter number 3, 4, 5 are going to describe the further things, how to discriminate, how to act, and so on. So this is why here, or why at so many places in so many purports, Prabhupada appears to criticize the Karma Kand section and all. So it's not that Karma Kand section is disgusting, but yes, from the point of pure bhakti, it obviously is going to be such a low form of a pleasure. So it's not that anybody who does karma kand becomes disgusting by default. Let's say, for example, even when we establish temples, there is whole bhumi pujan and all those things. These are explained in the Vedas. They are explained. It's a standard method. Whether you set up a home or you set up a temple, there are certain pujas you have to do. So rituals are performed by us also, but rituals make sense when you take it further ahead. So that's the whole idea. There will also be many people who are attached not only to the flowery words of the Vedas, but also to several other devatas. But not all of them are attached to the devatas just for purely desires. So that also Krishna says that it is I who make the faith in their hearts stable, so that they are still attached to the Vedic methods, and slowly that will lead their life towards transcendence. And Krishna clearly says one should not disturb faith of such sincere people. So the beauty would be how we convey the message of bhakti in such an attractive and blissful way that a person is inspired to give up a habit of gratification and get into a habit of relishing transcendence. This is the true form of preaching. Not preaching purely through the words and thrusting some knowledge of finding faults and weaknesses in people or their methods of prayer, but rather behaving, acting, and speaking in such a way that they are inspired to relish transcendence. They want to relish the beauty of Krishna's personality, Krishna's pastime, and that is not conveyed ever by words. It is conveyed by the emotions you yourself enjoy and how you vyavahar, how you interact with people in a very graceful and nicer way. So here in text number 44, further, Prabhupada explains, Krishna explains, Vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhav na vidhiyate. That those people whose minds do not have, who are bewildered with such things. What such things? This Yamimam Pushpitam Vacha, these flowery words. Oh, this is, I can get good wife, I can get good husband, I can this way. How? Okay, it's so nice, it's so nice. Give me a new form of investment. I want to multiply my wealth. I want to multiply this. I want to multiply my pleasure. It's the same thing. Now, in the journey of wanting to multiply pleasure, you could just become addicted to it. There will always be some section of people who will be like that. And for such people, because their intelligence is many branched, they want this also, that also, this also, that also, samadhavana vidhiyate. Even for spirituality, one needs to understand oneself and act nicely. If he doesn't do that, then somebody else will keep telling you what is the best thing for you all the time. And all the time your mind will be confused. Your heart is pulling you somewhere. Some things of family is pulling you somewhere. Then you have ambitions in the mind. Then someone of your friend, he has acquired something and he says this is fascinating. So that's another direction where your mind is being pulled, and so many other things from internal and external. When you have a whole branch of desires, that is what is being explained. Samadhav na vidhiyate. Stability of mind is a very far-fetched goal, or probably an impossible goal. Na vidhiyate. So this is very, very important. This word vyavasayatmika buddhi is very important. Just like vyavasaya means business. Just like a business-minded person, just like one who is business minded, he's so focused that this is what I need to achieve. That is called Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. So a person who really wants to progress in spiritual life also should have a Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, or a focused intelligence, that he's trying to align all aspects of life, acquisition of home, wealth, all the facilities and everything in proportion to his psychophysical nature, so that it creates a symphony by which he can practice spiritual life. So this is some message of this few verses. So I would like to stop here. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to do so.
Hare Krishna Jagannath Priya Prabhu, this is Anand Gauranga Das and Amrit Keli Das ji. We joined late Prabhuji, but it was really nice.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice class. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, thank you.
So this is Geeta Mala. I have a question, Prabhu.
Yes.
Please accept my humble obeisances. So even as we are practicing in our Krishna consciousness, even as devotees on the sadhana path, every now and then we get attracted to our old habits, especially if our families are not very much into it. Then some family influence is there. I have older children, who are married, and and sometimes I associate with them and my grandchildren. So it's very hard to kind of sometimes, even in our sadhana paths, to kind of get away from our, getting attracted to the
transcendence. Yeah,
away from the transcendence and getting into, sometimes into the family kind of activities. How do we get stronger and not kind of getting attached to family in such way?
One aspect is I generally always tell devotees that for those devotees who are doing sadhana and they are already into the process reasonably and practicing it reasonably to some degree, it's better to not live our lives with a sense of guilt that I'm not a pure devotee, I'm not a pure devotee, I'm not a pure devotee, why my heart is filled with desires and this and that. Instead of feeling like that, we need to also understand the literature of Bhagavatam when it speaks about these great devotees. These people have gone through exceptional levels of tolerance and sacrifice in their very lives and also earlier lives, because of which now they are relishing the aspects of transcendence. It is not necessary that we all need to go through the same amount of trouble or penances, but those things are also, they also do have some place for our growth in spirituality. So meanwhile, while we do have some forms of attachments and likings to many aspects of this material creation, we use that to connect to the Lord through that. That's the beginning. That's the beginning stage how we can at least do that. And it's not that every gratification we do is going to be detrimental to spiritual progress. Sometimes certain amount of pleasure is required so that a person stabilizes, that he can chant the next day properly. For example, a person suppose suddenly loses all, he keeps praying, my dear Lord, I'm so attached to my beautiful husband or beautiful wife and my wonderful kids. I want pure devotional service. Please please fill my heart. Ananya Bhakti, nothing else but you. And suddenly there's an accident, and let's say the whole family dies except for that particular individual, the husband or the wife. In most cases, it, it's always a tragedy. It's so tragic for one because that those material things are also essential for spiritual things to be done. So, it more than thinking that this is I'm having a lot of attachments, it also shows that these I'm at the stage where I need these things. So when I exercise looking or measuring others or myself, I need to take this into account that this is necessary for the growth. And while I engage in certain amount of, let us say, not a pleasure, but support system, what I need this much amount of material aspects or those things. I try to pray to the Lord that, oh, my lovely little child, she's so cute, he's so cute. Uh, it's amazing, Krishna, how you create this Maya, how fascinating these children are. I'm actually telling something about myself. My some of like my niece, she's so beautiful, so wonderful. And when kids, especially now, though she's a little bit grown up, but when they were like 6 months or 1 year, infants, they are so amazing. They just look like a personal miracle of God. If I go to devotees' homes and I see small kids, they really steal your mind, the way they speak and think, pure innocence, just being. So during that time, we understand, oh, this is something which I relish. Okay, you relish it and try to see what Krishna is trying to teach me through this. How he's showing that simplicity is so attractive. Uh, a person who does not have a heart with such complicated things, that's what a child is. He or she is so attractive. He's so fascinating that anytime we want to do anything for them, we align our lives for them. It's because of their minds and their personalities as small kids. So we try to learn those aspects. What's that which is attractive in that child? And that's how we do little bit of Sankhya Yoga, this sense of discrimination, and try to bring God in those things. In those attachments, also try to see that, oh, this is the pleasure which ultimately, am I being able to see the hand of God in this support system which I need and I have been given that way. Like if I'm born, I first need, I think that without the lap of my mother, I will not survive. And how a child always wants the mother. But as I grow, I don't just need a mother, I need a father. Then I realize that I need a sibling. And then I realize that I also need friends. Then I realize that I need teachers. And then I realize that I need an education. And then I realize I need a job. And you see at different stages of life, some support system comes and it gets minimized. First, the mother support system is the most primary, then it keeps getting minimized. At a later stage, the education system is the most primary and others is back secondary. Then at a third stage, the job becomes the most primary, other things are secondary. Then the wife or the spouse becomes one of the primary things, and other thing. When the kids happen, then they become the primary, other become secondary. So in this entire journey, what I'm seeing is at different stages of life, it is God who is coming to help me. It is Krishna who is coming in the form of a husband, wife, mother, father. That energy is pervading everywhere just to facilitate my journey, to hold my finger and help me navigate my life. And then at a certain stage, the primary aspect will be only Paramartha, or the aspect of transcendence. So meanwhile, I'm seeing that people are coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. So when I'm also attached to someone, or I'm attached to some desire, I know that if it is coming, then it is definitely going to go. Let me see the hand of the person who is bringing that facility. Let me also see the hand of the person when that facility goes away. That's how we cultivate our mind, our intelligence. This whole science is called the science of Purushartha. Artificially, it's not possible. And I don't feel that devotees should keep feeling a sense of regret all the time that still I'm not getting purified. When it will happen, there's no hope. It's not like that. Spiritual life is susukham kartum agayam. It's actually very beautiful. So don't be too, that's what my approach is, not to be too averse to those things which naturally come to you and they are within the dharmic domain, within the essential, without violating certain aspects. If it is coming, it's fine. Don't be too greedy for it, but don't be too hard that once it comes, I'm not going to leave it. Not like, okay, this come, it's fine. Okay, it's going to go, it's fine. So trying to ease out ourselves. What Krishna keeps speaking about, the middle path always, so sukha dukkha samay kritva labha labha jaya jaya, no, not too much attached to sukh, not too much attached. Try to see that energy in between. Having conducted our lives like that, सुखे थाको दुखे थाको सदा हरि बोले थाको गृहे थाको वने थाको सदा हरि बोले. Even during sukh, hari bol. Even during dukh, hari bol. Maybe the voice of hari bol will become less, but still let it be hari bol. In that fashion, if we conduct ourselves gracefully, it will be very beautiful. The journey will not be a problem, and it is okay. Sometimes desires will haunt our minds. We'll pray. My dear Lord, now that I have surrendered to you, I do not want to be burdened by this big project of purifying myself. But at least I'll focus on what I need to do, and within what comes easily without excessive prayas, I will try to keep my mind satisfied within what I get, not being haunted by desires. That way.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice.
And also one thing, especially when we are dealing with kids, children, or anybody, if we like someone, there is an aspect, our love and our care also nourishes their spirituality. And spirituality is not always about whether he's chanting Krishna or not. It's a sense of security and composure one gets in life. When one gets that, he goes to a higher, he seeks something better and better as one becomes more and more secure. So if I offer my care and love, to me it may be a form of attachment, but for someone else it's a form of security. So Krishna arranges things in a way that he can convert that attachment into some form of betterment for somebody else. So we can pray also that way, that if in some particular aspect that I just cannot deal with that particular attachment or weakness of mine, then we pray to the Lord that, my dear Lord, I'm just totally helpless in this aspect. You please see that it is somehow converted into some kind of service unto you. Bhishma had prayed like that in the Mahabharata, that I am helplessly aligned by my vows to serve the throne of Hastinapur, and I am unable to take sides of Pandavas. But my dear Krishna, you please do things in a way that my being in the side of Kauravas just helps Pandavas. So Krishna said, okay, I'll take care of that. So that.
Very nice prayer. Thank you.
So if there is no more question, we can stop here.
Oh, Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have a question.
Okay.
I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but I think you were talking about how, like, if you materially gain these sense gratifications, you do it whimsically. And you said we should gain these, like, fulfill our sense gratifications, like, by Vedic. So can you give me an example of how we can do it Vedically?
Oh, beautiful. What's your name?
Chaitanya.
So Chaitanya is asking this question for those who you could not hear, that I spoke that about gratifying our senses in a whimsical way and deriving some sort of pleasures through the Vedic way. So can I give an example about it? That's the question, right?
Yes.
So let's say you want to eat something wonderful and tasty. So how could you do that whimsically? You could just go outside to a store, buy something which is not good for your health, it does not have the right ingredients in it, it's not organic, it's artificially made and grown, and probably it's stale, but it has been put, so many flavors and colors have been put, and you just eat, so it appears tasty. Now there is another way you could do it, or say for that matter, you just kill somebody to relish something. I like beef, I like chicken, I like mutton, I like pig. There are people like that, right? And I heard recently someone was telling me that there are some steak houses which they fry the meat in rum and liquor, like we fry our patties. Patties banate na kya? So they fry it in oil, right? Oil and ghee. They fry these guys. They fry meat. First of all, you kill an animal. You do bloodshed just so that you can eat something, and then you also put liquor in it and you fry it and then you eat. Now they are also deriving some form of pleasure, and we also, when we eat, the other form of eating is we buy the right kind of things, healthy things, and then we flavor it nicely in our kitchen, we offer it to the Lord, and we still eat. So we are also enjoying. It's not that we are not having a form of a sense gratification. There is a pleasure in eating all the beautiful prasad and other things. There's a lot of pleasure. But then one person did the pleasure in a whimsical way, and we are doing the pleasure in the Vedic way, that way. So that aspect is there in all forms. Like in the forms of sport, you can play with your friends. That's also a form of sport, and there is another form of sport where you just kill animals for sport. That's also a sport. So that is a whimsical form of pleasure. This is a Vedic form of pleasure. Or let's say that you love to win when you play, like kids when they play any game, you love to play to win, right? Nobody plays to lose. So you could want to win by cheating, by lying, by doing wrong things. And then another form of playing is here, you play, you strive hard, you increase your skills, and you do it nicely. So when you do anything with honesty and sincerity, that is the Vedic way. And that happens also in other aspects of relationships. You want to have a good relationship with someone, you do it in a Vedic way. So all aspects, you do it nicely. That is what is called living a dharmic life. When Krishna says dharma sthapana, that simply means that giving us guidelines on how to conduct our affairs of all the aspects of our life, studying, playing, recreation, entertainment, and so on. That way.
Thank you.
Thank
Prabhuji, I have a question.
you. Okay.
In the 10 offenses against the holy name, the last offense also says to continue to maintain material attachments even after hearing so many instructions on the matter is an offense. So how should we understand that in the context that you have provided?
Yeah. So here we are not discussing about that aspect that specifically in these verses that we are continuing to maintain the attachment. There are some attachments where you can strive and get rid of, and there are some attachments which do not get rid within this one particular life. Sometimes it's just not possible. It's just the way things are going. Some people cannot overcome the mind, and maybe they cannot overcome for those 10 years. Maybe after 10, 15 years, they'll overcome those kind of things, or maybe after 20, 30 years. But it is the aspect of patience here, what we are talking, that you deal with different aspects of the pleasures. That's why I say things come and go, things come and go, come and go. Try to learn the hand which is there, like Sutre Mani Ganaiva, that Krishna is the thread between all the beads. So if we try to understand the thread, then we'll be able to come out of that. Now, what is that aspect which Padma Puran mentions is 10 offenses and to continue to maintain attachments? That particular, the 10th offense, I think it's not the 10th, it is the last offense. Oh yeah, it is the 10th offense. Or it is the after the offense we say?
It
Is
is.
it 10? Is it 10? Okay.
It's the last year.
Okay. Sorry. Anyway, so to continue maintain material attachments means there are some kind of people who, having known the aspect of transcendence, they feel that, I want everything of material things, but you know what, I'm anyways going to die, and if things are going to get destroyed, I do not want to face that situation as well. I want that when I die next life, everything has to be taken care of. And therefore, I want to work on that aspect also of dealing with death. So there are people who become so opportunist that they want material desires, and if they want full material desires, at the same time, they want full spiritual desires. They don't want to compromise anywhere. And this thing never, ever happens. You cannot keep your feet on both the boats and have both things exactly like that. Someday, you'll have to, if you want, Ananya Bhakti means what? Jnana Mishra. It's not Jnana Mishra or Karma Mishra. It is Anya Abhilashita Shunya Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. To get rid of all aspects of Jnana and Karma and only Shuddha Bhakti. It's a very high stage. But that's not possible as long as one even has an iota, a tinge of material desire left. But there are people who think that I want this pleasure also, and suppose I fall short of material things, I will compensate it with spiritual matters. And while I'm doing spirituality, Krishna is a far-fetched goal. I don't know when that will happen. Meanwhile, I do not want to lose on material aspects. So someone who deals with transcendence in an opportunistic way, for such kind of people, this particular shloka is explained. That to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. How can one maintain attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter? So look at this construction of this whole sentence. To maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. If you truly understand so many instructions in this matter, you would not actually have as many material attachments. Or even if you have, you will not want to maintain it that, my dear Lord, you just keep this in place. You will be wanting that, my dear Lord, please help me to sail through gracefully. But a person who is an opportunist, he wants to play with both things. And he's not truly inclined to transcendence, but if there is some opportunity, he does not want to lose. For such kind of a mindset, this is what is explained. So it simply means that while you learn the aspects of transcendence, please strive not to maintain material attachments. So now, if I don't want to maintain material attachments, but I have it, what are you going to do? It's a stalemate situation. I don't have to maintain it, but then what do I do? It's just that I'm just unable to deal with my own conditioning, however it is. So then pray, 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 pray. That's what I was saying. Like Bhishma himself says, I'm just stuck through my vows and duties and dharma, and according to my intelligence and this is what I feel is right. And I'm just unable to do. This is like a dead end for me. You please, now you only do. You only pull me out, or you do something in whichever way. This is where I resign myself. But now when that prayer happens is where he has put his best effort and he's reaching the limit of his capacity. So that's how I was trying to put in that context. Not that we become opportunistic that way.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
I hope it is clear.
Yes, Prabhuji, it's clear.
Okay. So basically, we have to be patient and graceful with ourselves, and at the same time, not take things for granted. If we can, we have to somehow find the balance in both ways. Because if we become impatient with ourselves, then you lose faith and faith in the process. And if you become lazy, then you lose the pleasure in the process. So both things, there has to be a balance and effort in this. So thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Hari Bol.
Yo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnav ki jai.
Jai.
Jagannath Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.